Good evening, sweetheart. It's Maggie. Come sit with me. Let's make this night a gentler one. Tonight feels still, not the heavy kind of stillness that presses on your chest, but the quieter kind, the kind that arrives when the world decides not to interrupt you for a while. There's no rain tonight. Seattle can be surprisingly restrained sometimes. No tapping on the window, no whispering on the roof, just the hum of the house doing what it's done for years. I set the kettle down a moment ago, and the kitchen returned to silence so quickly it almost felt like it had been holding its breath for me. I stirred my tea slowly, the spoon making that soft, familiar sound against the porcelain. It's chamomile tonight, not because I needed it, but because the evening felt like it would appreciate something mild. I carried the cup into the living room, careful the way I always am now, not cautious, just considerate of my hands. And that's when it happened. For just a second, my hand trembled. Not much, not enough to spill the tea, just enough to notice. I stopped walking, not out of fear, more out of curiosity. At 63, you learn the difference. The cup stayed steady. The tea didn't slosh. Nothing dramatic announced itself. Still, my fingers had spoken before my thoughts could catch up. I set the cup down, and I sat. There was no rush in my chest, no sudden memory knocking, no bad news waiting behind the moment. Just that small, quiet question hovering in the room. Well, that was new. Lily shifted at my feet, the way she does when she senses a pause that isn't meant to turn into a problem. She didn't look up, didn't fuss, just adjusted herself closer, as if to say, I'm here, carry on. I've always admired that about dogs. They don't assume the worst. They don't rush to conclusions. They notice, and then they settle. I wrapped both hands around the cup again. The warmth was still there, gentle, steady, familiar. My hands didn't tremble this time, not because I told them not to, but because I didn't ask them anything at all. You know, we tend to panic, not at the sensation itself, but at what we think it might mean. A small ache becomes a worry. A skipped beat becomes a story. A single tremble becomes a question mark that grows too quickly. But tonight, I didn't interrogate the moment. I didn't reach for explanations. Didn't scan my body for evidence. Didn't turn the second into a headline. I just sat there. The lamp glowed the same way it always does. The room didn't change its mind about me. The night didn't lean in to inspect anything. And slowly, without any effort on my part, the moment passed. Not defeated, not solved, just finished. I took a small sip of tea. It tasted exactly as it should. Warm, simple, unconcerned. Funny thing is, if I hadn't noticed that tremble, the evening would have continued exactly like this anyway. And maybe that's the quiet truth of it. Sometimes a small worry stops by, not to stay, not to warn us, but just to see if we're still listening to ourselves. Tonight, I listened, and then I let it go. Come sit with me a little longer, sweetheart. The night is calm, the tea is warm, and nothing else needs our attention right now. We'll take the rest of this evening, one gentle moment at a time. After that small tremble passed, the room stayed exactly the same. That's what surprised me most. The lamp didn't flicker. The tea didn't cool too quickly. The evening didn't suddenly become serious. Nothing leaned in to investigate me. And that's when I realized something I've learned only with age. The body often speaks before the mind feels the need to comment. We're taught the opposite, aren't we? That thought comes first, that meaning arrives quickly, that every sensation must have a reason attached to it. But bodies are older than explanations. I lifted the cup again. The warmth met my palms in that familiar way. Not hot, not urgent, just present. My hands were steady now, not because I checked them, not because I tested anything. They simply were. At 63, I've had enough mornings and evenings to know this truth quietly. A body doesn't always send messages. Sometimes it just clears its throat. And goodness knows, mine has earned the right to do that once in a while. I thought back, not sharply, just gently, to other moments like this. Standing at the sink years ago, opening a jar that didn't want to be opened, holding a pen at the post office, signing my name slower than I used to, reaching for my keys and missing them by half an inch. Small moments, unannounced. Back then, I'd rush to explain them. Fatigue, stress, age. I'd build a whole little courtroom in my head, presenting evidence no one asked for. But tonight, I didn't do that. I watched the sensation, the way you watch a bird land briefly on the fence and then leave again. No chase, no naming, no fear. The body appreciates being trusted. It responds to calm faster than it ever responds to analysis. I rested my elbow on the arm of the chair. That familiar sound came out, the soft complaint of wood that's lived a full life. I smiled without meaning to. Some things creak because they've been useful. Lily shifted again, her weight adjusting closer to my ankle. Her breathing stayed slow, even. She didn't need reassurance. She didn't sense danger. Animals are excellent judges of real emergencies. I ran my thumb along the rim of the cup. The porcelain was smooth, unconcerned with the moment that had just passed. The spoon made a faint sound as I set it aside. Another small punctuation. Here's something I've learned quietly, sweetheart. The mind panics when it arrives late. The body has already done what it needed to do. By the time the mind asks, "What was that? That tremble earlier?" It wasn't danger. It wasn't weakness. It was simply my nervous system stretching its legs after a long day of being polite. We forget how much holding we do, holding posture, holding tone, holding ourselves together in grocery lines and conversations and polite smiles. Eventually, something loosens, just to remind us we're still alive. I took another sip of tea. It had cooled slightly now. Still good, still comforting. Cooling doesn't mean ruined. It just means time passed. I leaned back into the chair, letting it support my spine the way it always has. No test, no scan, no follow-up questions, just rest. And do you know what happened next? Nothing. The body didn't repeat itself. The night didn't escalate. The moment didn't return with friends. Because small anxieties don't grow on their own. They grow when we water them with attention. Tonight, I chose to offer mine somewhere else. Right here. With the light. With the tea. With you. And the body feeling heard without being examined, settled right back into the evening, as if to say, "Thank you, that's all I needed." You know what I noticed next? It wasn't the tremble. It was the thought that almost followed it. That tiny voice that likes to lean in and whisper, "Should I be worried?" It didn't shout. It didn't panic. It simply hovered, waiting to see if I would invite it to stay. At 63, I've learned something about fear. Most of the time, we aren't afraid of what happens. We're afraid of what it might mean. A sensation appears, and before it finishes introducing itself, the mind is already reaching for a story, not because it enjoys drama, but because it wants control. Control feels safer than uncertainty, even when the story itself is frightening. I felt that moment approach, that familiar crossroads, the one where you can either sit with the unknown or interrogate it until it grows teeth. I chose to sit, not bravely, just quietly. The chair held my weight without question. The room didn't lean in. The lamp didn't blink. I noticed my breath again, not counting it, not correcting it, just noticing. And in that noticing, the question softened, not answered, just unnecessary. Fear, I've learned, is often afraid itself, afraid of being ignored, afraid of not being taken seriously, afraid that if it doesn't shout, it won't be seen. And when we rush to examine it, we confirm its suspicion. We tell it, yes, you matter enough to rearrange the room. But when we don't, when we simply remain present, fear loses its script. I lifted my cup again. The tea had cooled a little more, still warm enough, still kind. I took a sip, not because I needed it, but because the moment didn't need tension. I could feel my shoulders lowering on their own. That's always the first place fear settles. In the lift, we forget we're holding. Lily adjusted at my feet. She let out a long, comfortable breath, the kind that says, "There's nothing to watch for." Animals don't rehearse disasters. They respond to what's real. And what was real was a quiet room, a steady lamp, a woman sitting safely in her own evening. The mind tried once more to offer commentary, just a flicker, just a suggestion. I didn't argue with it. I didn't reassure it. I didn't push it away. I simply didn't continue the conversation. Some thoughts leave when you stop answering them. That's the part no one tells you. Fear doesn't always need to be calmed. Sometimes it just needs to be outlasted. And this one, it wasn't strong enough to stay on its own. Not tonight. Not in this chair. Not with the tea cooling quietly between my hands. I leaned back a little further. Let the evening hold the rest. The thought drifted away the same way it arrived. Softly, without explanation. And suddenly, there was nothing to manage, nothing to monitor, nothing to brace for. Just a woman, an old chair, a loyal lamp, and a night that had decided to remain gentle. Sometimes, sweetheart, the bravest thing we do is refuse to be impressed by a small fear. It's a quiet thing, realizing when something has already left. No announcement, no closing door, just the absence of weight where there was, a moment ago, something else. I noticed it first in my hands. They rested around the cup without instruction. Warm, still. There was no effort in holding it now, and that's usually how I know a small worry has finished passing through. Anxieties that arrive quietly often leave the same way. They don't argue. They don't demand proof. They simply check to see if the space is available. Tonight, it wasn't. Not because I guarded it, but because I was already occupied with breath, with warmth, with being. I leaned my head back just enough to let the chair take more of my weight. That sound has become familiar over the years. Once, I worried it meant the chair was failing. Now I know better. It's just acknowledging movement. Aren't we all? The lamp continued to glow, steady and uninterested in drama. Light has always had better judgment than people. I reached for the spoon again, stirring what little warmth remained in the cup. The tea responded kindly. No bitterness, no complaint, just a quiet swirl settling back into stillness. That felt like a lesson I didn't need explained. Small anxieties don't want attention. They want acknowledgement. And once they feel noticed, without panic, they move on. I've learned not to chase relief, Chasing makes everything run faster. Instead, I let the moment widen on its own. Outside, the night stayed calm. No rain, no wind pushing at the windows, just the hum of a city that knows how to hold its breath. I thought briefly of faith, not the kind that lectures, the kind that trusts timing, the kind that believes the body was designed with wisdom long before fear learned how to interrupt. Somewhere deep in my chest, something loosened further. Not a release, a permission. Lily shifted again. She pressed closer, warm and certain. Animals don't worry about what passed. They respond to what remains. And what remained tonight was calm, plain, unremarkable in the best way. I realized then the moment hadn't asked me to do anything, not to be brave, not to be strong, not even to understand. It only asked that I not interfere. And because I didn't, it resolved itself, like so many things do when given enough room. I took one more sip of tea, barely warm now, still comforting. There was something deeply reassuring about that even after time passed, kindness lingered. Some nights teach us lessons. Others simply remind us we already know them. Tonight was the second kind. I sat there a while longer, not waiting for anything else to happen. The evening had finished its work. There's a particular comfort in realizing the night has returned to its ordinary self. Not quieter, not deeper, just familiar again. After the worry passed, nothing dramatic replaced it. No wave of relief, no sudden clarity. Only the soft return of the room being a room. The lamp stayed the same. The air didn't change temperature. The clock continued its patient work without comment. I shifted slightly in the chair. There it was again, that gentle protest that sounds less like complaint and more like recognition. Yes, I murmured quietly, we're still here. I've learned to appreciate that sound. It means the evening is moving forward without resistance. I reached for the cup again, out of habit more than thirst. The tea was nearly finished now, a thin warmth clinging to the bottom. Still enough. I tapped the spoon once, not to stir, just to hear it answer. That small sound felt grounding, like knocking gently on the present moment and being let in. Sometimes reassurance arrives like that, not spoken, just audible. Lily stretched at my feet, long and unbothered. Her comfort returned fully. no vigilance, no listening for what might go wrong. She had already decided the night was safe. I envy that certainty sometimes, but tonight I borrowed it. My thoughts slowed further. They stopped circling, stopped checking, stopped asking if everything was truly okay, because it was. Not perfect, not resolved, just okay enough to rest inside. I noticed how my shoulders had lowered without me asking them to, how my jaw softened, how the space behind my eyes felt less crowded. The body knows when it's allowed to stand down. I didn't replay the moment of worry, didn't analyze it, didn't try to learn from it. Some experiences don't need processing, they need completion, and this one was complete. The house made its quiet, settling sounds, wood adjusting, hair moving, the soft companionship of age. I thought briefly about tomorrow, only briefly, not with planning, just acknowledgement. Tomorrow would arrive whether I rehearsed it or not. Tonight didn't require preparation. I rested my hand on the arm of the chair and let my fingers stay there, warm, present, still. There was no tension left to manage, only time to allow. The night had returned to its simplest promise. Nothing more is required of you now. And so I stayed, not waiting, not listening, just being part of the quiet again. The night has that feeling now, the kind that arrives when everything that needed to pass already has. The lamp hums quietly beside me, no brighter, no dimmer, just steady. I didn't move right away. There's a courtesy I've learned in letting a moment finish itself. The cup sat empty on the table. I didn't rinse it yet. Some rituals deserve to wait until morning. Lily sighed, the deep, satisfied kind. Her breathing found that slow rhythm that means she's already half elsewhere. I rested my hand lightly against my chest for just a moment, not checking, just acknowledging. Everything felt in place. Earlier, my hands had trembled, only for a second, long enough to remind me that the body remembers things before the mind explains them. And now they were still again, warm, trusting. I smiled without meaning to, not because the night had been easy, but because it had been honest. Honesty feels like relief when you stop asking it to be more. I shifted forward in the chair. There it was, that familiar sound saying, "Yes, this part is ending." I gathered the blanket closer, not out of cold, but out of comfort. Some closings don't need ceremony. They only need permission. I reached out and turned the lamp just a touch lower. The room accepted it easily. The day no longer asked for review. The night didn't ask for promises. Everything felt complete without explanation. So if your hands felt uncertain today, if your breath caught for reasons you couldn't name, let tonight be proof that it can pass quietly, without consequence. I'm here with you in this soft ending. Nothing more to do, nothing left to carry. Rest well tonight, sweetheart. Good night from me, Maggie.